was a storm coming through, I try sometimes to go out to her place and sit on her back porch, and she had that tin roof, and you just hear that rain hitting on it. We just sit out there and enjoy it. I didn't get to do it enough, but it was fun. Okay, we're ready now. I thank you, Father, for this day. I thank you for your life-giving rain. I thank you for the life it brings. I thank you for your breath, Father, that every breath you take, more life comes alive. And I thank you that you're alive in our lives. And I just pray that your word comes forth today, Father, in your great name. Amen. So, I don't even know how I'm going to start today. I had a plan. I had a good plan. Had a good plan all week. Been thinking about it all week. Then something happened about 8 o'clock last night. And sometimes I take notes all through the week, just writing ideas down. And sometimes I think about it through the week. And I got to work off and on by myself a lot, which gives me more time to think to myself. And so I had a real good, strong idea of how I was going to put it forth. And anyway, that was until about 8 o'clock last night. And I started to actually put it on paper. We're going to start, I think, in Hebrews 11. I'm thinking about how my intro to everything. We'll just read Hebrews. How's that? Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And as I was going to break this down, I've realized I've done this before. So do we remember what confidence means? Or do we think we know what it means? Confidence is the state of feeling certain about the truth of something. There's people that I talk to that I can take what they say as truth. There's people that I talk to that I can say, yeah, that may be truth. There's some people I talk to that, I don't know how the saying goes, would rather crawl up a pole and tell a lie than stay on the ground and tell the truth. But sometimes I'm told stuff and I'm not confident, if that makes sense. Assurance is a positive declaration intended to give confidence. So I can tell Miss Shannon all day long, I assure you, Hal's a good guy. Okay? But she may not have confidence in what I'm saying. Sorry, Al. Okay? Is that making sense? Now, we're talking about Hebrews, the way I understand it, is written to maybe a second generation of Jewish Christians who might have been waffling back and forth, maybe wanting to go back to where they came from. So the author wrote to them and say, hey, it's all good, don't worry. So now we know that faith. Well, what is our faith? Well, we have faith in Jesus. We have faith in our Creator. Okay, y'all with me? That's not exactly where I wanted to go with that, but this is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Because I'm pretty sure back then there was nothing visible. Okay, are you with me? By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he was dead. Do we know the story of Cain and Abel? Okay. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists. I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to talk about some ancients, if that's all right for a minute. We got to have faith, okay, that he is who he said he is, that he is the creator. In Job 1:8, and you don't necessarily have to go there. Did you know that Job, the book of Job, might be considered the first book of the Bible? Have y'all ever heard that? April has, because she knows all. In 1:8, then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. In Job 2:3, it basically, this is like after he's already had some stuff done to him. God says the same thing. Job, he's a great man. In Genesis 6:9, it says Noah was blameless. Okay? In chapter 12, it starts the story of Abraham. Okay? And all through Abraham, these people were not perfect. But they had one thing in common. They had faith in God. In 15 and 16, it says that Abram believed the Lord and it was counted as righteous. These people, I have a habit, if I read a book, which I like to read, not technically cowboy, but I really like mountain man books. And I have a way of thinking these people are real. You know, you got this book that takes you a day to read, which, because once I open it up, it's kind of like a movie. I can't turn it off. If I open a book, I've got to finish it. But sometimes I forget when I read the Bible, these people are real. They were there. And as you go, you read more about Abraham, there was Jacob, Isaac, or was it Isaac and Jacob? Isaac then Jacob. These were not perfect people. They had issues. But before the written law, before rules were written down, they knew who this creator of all was, and they had faith. This is all going to lead someplace here in a minute. I'm just, because we were talking about ancients. In Daniel 1:6, among Nebuchadnezzar took over Israel. Actually, king of Babylon came to, let's start with one. In the 3rd year of the reign of the king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered the king, because I can't say that name, of Judah into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered the chief of his court officials to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. So he's taken the top of the top from Judah, from God's people, and he picked the very best to come into his courts and serving, okay? Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. And then in verse 8, but Daniel resolved, because, they brought him food and wine, they were going to take care of them the Babylonian way. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. So, I'm sure they had a battle. The good guys lost. But I guess since God turned them over to them, so I guess the good guys won. I don't know how you want to look at that. Could you imagine having the nerve to ask, nah, I don't want to eat what you're giving me. Can I continue in the way I've lived my whole life? Okay, are you following me? And in 6 and 10, I'm just telling you some people from ancients who stood up to the man. In 6 and 10, ah, 6:10. I'm sorry. Let's go to 3:16 first. The other three Hebrew had their names changed. So we know the story is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay? The king had made a giant statue, and everybody was supposed to bow whenever they heard the horn or the bell. We're supposed to bow to this golden statue. Okay? But these three men said, no, we're not going to do it. And in verse 16, they replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, because he asked them, well, why won't you do this? We don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Basically, we don't answer to you. I have a higher person that we answer to. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Bold statement, isn't it? Side note, how many times when we're praying for something do we say that? We say, God, I know you can heal me. God, I know you can fix this problem. But what's the next verse say? But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up before us. But how often do we, after we say that, say, but even if you don't, I know you're still God. And sometimes we may think back to this passage, but I don't think that's what these three men were saying. I think they had confidence. I think they had assurance that they were going to be healed. And then I think they were making another side point, but heck, even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. I'm not bowing to you. Whereas sometimes we look on our healing, on our problems we go through, on our daily life, life in America, life in North America, the whole world, we say, I know God can fix this. But if he doesn't, he's coming back soon. We give him, we give ourselves an out by saying, but even if he doesn't, I know he's still there. So I think we may in our brain, we may not know we're doing this, we lack that confidence, but we'll say something with assurance, hoping that it will lead to confidence. Does that make sense to everybody? You know, it's like, I don't know. But anyway, that was just something that I was just thinking about. So we need to have confidence in our faith. And we can say stuff with assurance. You know, I know this is going to happen because my God said it's going to happen. And we know the story. They got thrown into the furnace. The king looked down there and said, wait, didn't we throw 3? Why is there 4 people walking around in there? Okay? And then they were saved. Daniel 6 and 10. These guys were they didn't like that Daniel who wasn't Babylonian, got to get to such a high place in the government. But it's God's favor, just FYI. So they made a decree that for, I think it was 30 days, that they couldn't pray, or anyway, I better tell you what that was all about. In 7, the royal administrators have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce a decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Okay. They were saying for these next 30 days, you can't pray to God. Okay? Now, would that have stopped us? I'd like to think it wouldn't. But now, I might have shut my window. I might have switched my routine. But not Daniel. He went to his window in 10. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows were open towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. He wasn't afraid of what was going to happen. Just like the 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he knew in his heart that whatever trouble he got into, God would get him through it. Now, let's go back to Hebrews. How do you think they got to a point where they could bow up to the king? Noah built an ark. Hadn't seen rain in his lifetime. How do you get to the point where you listen to the psychedelic dreams you're dreaming? How without even anything written down? Do you get to a point where you trust God, like Abraham, move to another country and believe the fact that he's going to be the father of many nations? In verse 11, verse 6. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. We know they had faith. But how were they confident, and how could they speak with assurance that their faith was true? Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Y'all remember what earnestly seek means? To seek, through my concordance, is to search out, investigate, crave. Has anybody ever craved sushi? Sorry. There's times where I may go a month or two without eating it, and that's all I think about. It's getting now where it's almost been a year since I've got to partake in one of my favorite times of year, and I get to a point where I crave it, where everything I think about. This year I'm hoping to get to bow hunt. I'm starting to get to a point where, okay, just cool off a little bit. I'll sweat in the low 90s. I don't want to go out in the upper 90s and sweat. But I'm getting to a point where I'm craving. This is all I want to think about. I've got to get out there. I've got to find a good spot. I'm hoping to have a young gentleman go with me this year. I've got to find a good spot. Not so he can kill a big one, just so that he can see him, so he can enjoy what I enjoy. Demand. Which sounds funny with the rest of that. When you seek something, I demand to know where these deer are at. You know, I don't know. If you look up earnestly, it's with sincere and intense conviction. Brian, when you go fishing, are you serious? Okay. You're not going to go out there with a hook, a weight, and just cast it out there and start walking around. Okay? To me, that's just enjoying the outdoors. You're going to get the bait, but it's not just any bait. What are you fishing for? Okay? And it's not just any place. I mean, you're not going to go, I guess you can catch a bass in the river. It's been done before, but normally you're going to go to a lake or a pond. Intense conviction. So how did these ancients get to a point where God did all these things for them? Carrie and I had talked a couple of weeks ago. God's appointed time. We talk about that in the church. I think, well, why couldn't Jesus, instead of coming back in that time, come back now? You know, why did God pick that time? And then I think, you know, my mind rambles. Is it because we don't take time enough to earnestly seek him so that he could find 12 people to follow him, that he could trust to spread his word so that it will gradually reach every square inch of this great planet? Okay, are y'all with me? So anyway, we have to earnestly seek, and that's where we're going to today. Earnestly seek him. The more we look at him, the more we just got to have him. I was thinking, not too often have I ever had a dream. Speaking of dreams, Miss April, I'm mad at you. I thought it was going to be a good dream. It turned out to be a nightmare. I had a dream because I was in my mind I was thinking about the dreams that he came to these people in. I had a dream Miss April demanded I get up and lead praise and worship. No. I'll do it if Barry does it. Yeah, not even in my dreams. But that whole night as the storm was coming through, I was thinking about God coming to me in a dream. And then I dreamed about God coming to me in a dream. Anyway, we talked last week about it's not about the outside of the cup, it's the inside. Get our inside clean. We have to constantly be seeking Him like there's nothing else. When I played ball, that's all I thought about. Generally, baseball until towards the end, and then I started thinking about swimming out at Garrett's Lake. Just because, okay, I'm young, I'm tired, ball 3-4 times. That's back before they had tournaments all the time. Football, yeah, if we ever made it, which we never did make it to the playoffs, but if we did, half the team was already thinking about basketball, okay? But you have to earnestly seek to get better. And we think about cleaning. And then you go back to where we had ended up in Matthew, I think it was 6. I'm just about finished. How do you do these things? You've heard it said, do not commit adultery. We know that. But when you spend your whole life being taught, it doesn't hurt to look. Has anybody heard that before? It's okay, Luke, you can raise your hand. Have y'all been, I'm being honest here. What does the world teach us? What does Jesus teach? So how do you get that change after you're just a young man? It's going to be easy to change. Wait till you're my age, then read this and have to figure it out. Are y'all with me? How does that happen? Well, we diligently seek Him. We constantly, God, help me. Help keep cleaning my inside. In 21, you shall not murder. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. How can you be angry with anybody? Especially your whole life, you've been taught, someone takes from me, I'm taking from them. But that's not what Jesus says. How do you make that change? And it's like the law, remember, is the outside. But when we accept Jesus, everything's on the inside. And you just go down through reading revenge. Have you ever heard eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? But did you realize that that wasn't for the normal people? That was for the judges in the courts to decide, okay, Taylor took from me, so now we take from Taylor. It wasn't my decision. It was the courts. But we don't want to read that. But Jesus said, it's not an eye for an eye. If Taylor takes from me, he must need it. And if he needs it, if he needs my shoes, I better give him a pair of socks to go along with it. Or otherwise, when he goes out when it rains, his shoes are going to get stinky. But are you following me? There's a change that comes over us. But we can't do that on our own. We can't just, I'm going to finish up here. We know, confess with your mouth, believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord. And every week I get up here and I tell you, but there's stuff you need to do. Don't ever take God's grace. That's all it takes is God's grace. Okay? It's not about what we do, how we do it. But I want you to understand that Satan knows there is a God. So what's the difference between us and Satan? It's the work we allow God to do in us. Okay, are you following me? I didn't step out of line, did I, Miss April? The demons know. They know. So it's not enough to know that there is a God. We're covered by Jesus. We're saved. Let him clean you out so we can do the things we're supposed to do. And with that, I'm going to close. I'll save my next witty thing for another time. And everybody pray for Miss Jennifer this week. She's doing me a huge favor. For next week, I may or may not be here. I just don't. I think I'm going to be gone, but I may be here. So anyway, pray for her this week. Really. And I'll pray for you guys.